Good evening to the board and to everyone that is here. I'm Monica Woods and the principal at the intermediate school. This year we've all experienced some of the same challenges when it comes to our students and trying to really keep them focused on learning and growing socially when it comes to telephones in the schools. And so we all got together and looking at our data, decided we've got to really do something to be able to eliminate that as a serious challenge so that our kids will be able to focus more and we can really put our energies into continuing to build a positive climate around the school. So, make sure I do this right. So why are we using the Yondr phones? As I just said, in recognizing that cell phones have been a really big part of the discipline challenges at each of our buildings. We're looking at ways that we can be able to decrease those challenges and increase the learnability of our buildings. So while we know that phones have become an integral part of our daily living, we also found that learning and social behaviors improve drastically when phones are not around and students are engaged in those that are right there in their face, their teachers, their classmates, and then able to fully engage in the learning that's going on. A survey that was taken, and I believe this is by Yondr, the Yondr Corporation did this survey of 900 school partners on phone-free environments, and you can see the data there that says 65% of the schools saw an improvement in academic performance, 74% improvement in school student behavior, and 83% improvement in student engagement in the classroom. The cell phone discipline data that we have in our district, you look at the high school, 1,169 referrals regarding cell phone usage, which is approximately 26% of the total referrals for the year to date. The middle school had 764 referrals, being 20% of the total referrals, and then the intermediate school, 198 referrals, which gave us 19% of our total referrals. Some of those numbers may seem small, but when you look at our student body, the time that we have in the day, that takes away a major part of students being in the classroom and learning when teachers have to stop teaching or an activity has to be halted because of a telephone issue. Also, the telephone issues are very much correlated with other issues between students that cause referrals to the office and loss of learning time, suspensions, AEP, detentions, things like that.
So I wanted to touch on what Yondr usage looks like in the area as far as what other schools might have implemented it already, as well as what that implementation looks like and some of the details associated with it. So we consulted and reached out to administrative teams from Stivers School for the Arts, which is Dayton Public School, grades 7 through 12. And some of the details involving the Yondr bags, which we will continue to dive into, is that those bags are checked out to each student at the beginning of the school year. They've chosen to charge replacement bags to be $10 for Stivers. And some of the consequences that they use when rolling this out. The first time that the violation of that a phone is being used, the phone is collected and the parent or guardian is contacted. And then the phone is returned to the student at the end of the day for the first one. For a second infraction, the phone is collected and then discipline starts with maybe an after-school detention and then can progress for repeated violations to things like in-school suspension, out-of-school suspension, etc. They said certainly there are tips and tricks on the internet for what to do with the bags to try to break into them, so they'd also spent time educating their students, hey, this is what the purpose of this is, as well as this is the procedure that's being followed. From a middle school perspective, I had reached out to Trotwood Madison Middle School's principal. They're in their first year of implementation for Yondr. And similarly, their bags are checked out to individual kids. Every kid gets a bag at the beginning of the school year. They've chosen to charge $20 for a replacement bag, and their entry process basically outlines any student who's in possession of their phone is expected to have their bag out and show that they lock the bag shut as they walk into the building. If they don't see it, then they don't expect to see it for the rest of the day. And that's the goal that with any of this implementation is that for us to remove the phones from the learning environment so that we can focus on teaching and learning more effectively. At Trotwood Middle, consequences for noncompliance included the first time a student may have had their phone out or not had their phone locked up in their bag, parents or guardians had to pick up the phone. Second one, they went to a one-day out-of-school suspension for Trotwood Madison Middle School. They did, as they think through like year 2 of implementation, they're exploring ideas, and we'll get into the consequences that we have come up with as a team of how do you suspend the phone as instead of the student, and trying to do that effectively. And I believe now all Dayton Public School high schools, not just Stivers, but all high schools use this system as well. So just a quick touch on what implementation would look like and some of the details behind it. And then I think if we are able to pull up some of the videos, there's 2 links embedded in the slide that we can pull up those videos. So we did have, maybe about a month ago, a couple weeks ago, a Yondr employee of Yondr come out and see our entry and dismissal at all of our buildings, the intermediate, the middle, and the high school, to see logistically what that could look like. Like I said, the main idea of the process is each student has a bag checked out to them. As they walk into the building, they don't have to tap it against anything. It just contains a lock that you hold and you clamp shut. And once you clamp it shut, you can't open it again. At dismissal, the only difference of what dismissal looks like is you would have magnet stations or Yondr dismissal stations around any of the exit points of your building, so that those magnets could be screwed on in the case of the middle school, where, for example, Mr. Tittle, our SRO, would probably go around, screw those up, and then we'd have staff at each spot to make sure that those weren't plucked off the wall and taken with them on the way out the door, if that makes sense. Students then, as they walk by, they just tap that the magnet, and the bag pops back open. They keep the bag, and they can pull their phone out. With what the services the company provides is actually help us with implementation. So not only have they walked through what this could look like at the intermediate, the middle, and the high school, but they would also they'll be with us in the fall when we launch this, which is going to be incredibly helpful because they're another set of hands that help with the implementation of it. So the outline for our 3 buildings is that we will teach the expectations August 16th through the 18th. So in the fall we start school on a Wednesday. And the consensus is let's teach and go through those expectations and teach it again through those 3 days, with the plan to launch on Monday, August 21st, when it comes to actually implementing and using that in real time. So if you can click the first link, how Yondr works, a quick demo, you can see a quick video of hopefully, of what it looks like in practice.
Let's say you're going to see a show, taking a performance, and as you enter, they ask you to hand over your phone. And so a staff member would take your phone and put it in one of the... Hold on. So this is how Yondr works. Let's say you're going to see a show, taking a performance, and as you enter, they ask you to hand over your phone. And so a staff member would take your phone and put it in one of the Yondr pouches. Now you get your phone back. Now I have my phone, but I can't open the phone. I can't access the phone. I cannot open the pouch. This is locked. Go in, watch the show, enjoy the show. During the performance, let's say my phone starts to ring. Hear it ringing, I might even feel it vibrating in my pocket. Now at that point, if I want to access my phone, I would need to leave the theater, go back to the lobby, staff member would unlock the pouch, hey there, and I can access my phone. that's done.
So that obviously is a quick demo in terms of what the magnet looks like and the actual clasping of it. We have a second video that is also from Yondr that kind of features some of the ideas behind the implementation as well as the impact it's had on schools.
Ask a teacher, they'll tell you cell phones are still an issue and a big classroom distraction.
And now thousands of schools around the country, including right here in the metro, are taking back those classrooms with a small cell phone pouch.
Today, 95% of teens have access to a smartphone, and 45% self-report that they're online almost constantly. Smartphones have penetrated all aspects of daily life, but of special concern to educators is their prevalence in schools. The average kid gets their first smartphone at age 10. That's 5th grade. Most will open their first social media account within the next few years. But some schools are beginning to question the wisdom of allowing kids to enter the classroom with tiny computers and social networks in their pockets. These concerns, along with a general annoyance at phone-gazing concert goers, led 32-year-old Graham Dugoni to build a device called Yondr. Users drop their phone in, the pouch locks, and can only be reopened with a large magnet.
Come in through the door, and you open the pouch.
Get our phone out, make sure it's powered off, on airplane mode, all that.
Put your phone inside and you close it, and throughout the day you can't open it.
For me at first, I didn't really like it.
A pouch? Seriously?
I barely came to the school, they just started doing a Yondr thing. And I was like, oh my, why? Everyone was realizing that they weren't actually getting any work done, and like their schoolwork was like declining because of the phone use.
So this is phone usage per day before Yondr. How many messages did you get? How many times did you check social media? How many hours did you spend on your phone? How would you describe these numbers?
Big. Surprising.
Excessive.
A little too much.
I remember like sophomore year, I tried to get my followers up like every day, just check my followers like constantly.
You're just constantly comparing yourself to other women on your feed, and it definitely takes a toll on your self-image.
I got more focused and worried. My grades went up.
I was sitting alone, and I saw this other kid across from me who was also sitting alone, and can't find my phone. So I went up to them and I introduced myself, and actually met someone new.
3 days later, I was just like, what are we learning today? Because I can't even open it.
Was distracted and honestly happier kind of because they're not worrying about what's going on with social media.
Interacting way more, like instead of being on their phones and have their earbuds in and not interacting with people, a lot of people are interacting with people, getting to know other people.
The atmosphere seemed more positive. Yeah, I'm always used to having it right here and not having it for 8 hours throughout the day. It changes you.
Amazing moment happened with him, and then everybody who was there all pulled out their phones and were filming the moment. Nobody was in the moment. Everyone was documenting the moment.
You want a break from your phone. You don't even realize it.
Right.
You know, you want a break.
Grown, responsible, disciplined adults have a hard time watching a comedy show without the distraction of their phone.
We all need a break, just from that technology, just for a minute. We should have a good show tonight. Let's go, man. It's my birthday. No, it's not. But I still look good, though. I just want an autograph. You and your friends. Got me doing it in the penthouse. That's why I came up here. What you can't dance, ain't got rhythm. What you got, man? I'ma see you with them. Put your phone down. Let's get it. Forget your Instagram and your Twitter.
So as we begin to roll it out, we obviously want to make sure and we have a plan for communicating this information to families. Additionally, it was really interesting, even as a part of collecting data for this process. One of my 8th grade math teachers collected information on like the screen time for kids with phones, and it was north of 8 hours was the average, which is pretty remarkable when you think about a 24-hour day. So when we are outlining or thinking through like how do we communicate this to families for next steps, these are some of the ideas that we have, and I know that you have a handout with you that has some talking points as we begin this communication rollout. So we have a parent-guardian letter that is universal, so the same 5 through 12. The intent, the plan is to send that out via one call on May 26th in grades 5 through 12, and then again to repeat it the week of May 30th. The idea is to send that letter out multiple times and then to begin starting to use the language from the letter in our newsletters, where it just outlines some of the reasons why, some of the data, as well as how we teach this process. We certainly want to, we will have, and here in a minute we'll talk about plans for discipline or non-compliance with such policy. And we certainly want to sample what this process looks like. So one of the best pieces of advice the Trotwood Middle School principal gave me was like have this at your open house so that you can see it, feel it, see how the process works, talk through it in an informational setting, just to kind of outline it and give everyone a heads up. So there's a consensus in our buildings as we think through orientation or open houses, what that could look like, and how we communicate that information all to families. So Mr. White will talk a little bit about some of the non-compliance conversations.
I know it'll come to a shock to most of you when you ask your child for their phone and they look at you like you're crazy. I've raised 5 kids and I still remember taking it from my youngest, and I really started to worry for my life. I thought I was going to wait till I was asleep and get eaten. So understand this, and we had a set of non-negotiables in my building this year, and one of them was no phones. We didn't have Yondr bags. It worked out very well until certain people didn't start to follow the process anymore, and it fell apart pretty quick. So having the bag is the next level that I can tell you will work very well once we're over the hump. I promise you this, and you can ask about research, a text message gives you a dopamine hit. It actually, you can physically feel that, oh my God, I have a message. And the kids have gotten used to that. So now when we're taking that away, the meltdowns are going to happen. So we have to be understanding of the emotional side of this, and I'll be very honest with you. I saw 3rd graders when we took their laptops this year have meltdowns because they were so attached to that screen. So when we start talking about the discipline, as they come in the door, the first offense, we'll take it and return it at the end of the day. If they give it to us, if they're non-compliant, we have to take them to the office immediately and call the parent and say, look, they're not giving up their phone, they're choosing their phone over their education. And we're going to have some parents that say, I want them to have it, and we're going to have to explain to them that's not how it's going to work. So there's going to be those moments, so prepare yourselves for those. Second offense, the parent must pick up the phone at school. The third one, the parent picks up the phone, there's a detention that comes along with it. So this process, as you see it up there, is progressive. And I will be honest with you, I don't think we're going to have a whole lot get to 3. I think once they're in and once they get through 1 and 2, they'll be like, all right, they're not playing, this is how it's going to go, and probably 95% of the students will be compliant. And like I said, I lived through it this year, and it took a lot. It'll put an end to coordinated bathroom breaks. It'll put an end to a lot of the fights, a lot of verbal abuse that comes towards the adults when you're telling them to put the phone away. And a lot of times, like I said, that dopamine hit is what we're going to have to work through in this process. And it's not forever. It's like that girl said, after week 3, they put their phone away, they're used to not having it, and they're getting re-engaged in the classroom. And I think our mission being engage the mind, the muscles, and the imagination, this is an important step for us to take, to gain that control back over that media piece. And my last note is, can we just thank Eric at the end of this for a PowerPoint, because mine will never look this good. Never. So he did a nice job. Thank you.
I think there's one other piece of information, just odds and ends, that we wanted to make sure to add into this. And Monica or David, if there is anything that I missed, let me know. Or I know Amy's here as well, and Candace helped with the presentation too. Other electronic items that will go into the pouch will include smartwatch, AirPods. That's something that's been typical with both Trotwood Middle as well as Stivers, as well as any of the recommendations of Yondr. Obviously, if there's a medical reason for a smartwatch, then that's an exception, just like a medical note would be. If a student were to forget their pouch, what is typically done is the phone is turned in to the office for the day, and then they pick it back up at 2:10. I'm like, hey, I forgot this, let me turn it in, no big deal. We do plan to charge $10 for the replacement pouch across 5 through 12. And then within our student code of conduct, we plan to educate, and the intentional destruction or altering of a pouch would be a level 2 violation of the student code of conduct. There's there's one about destruction of school property. So those are just some of the odds and the ends associated with it, and the ideas behind implementation. So.
Does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
I'm sure. Okay. Already started with Mr. Wolf jokes here. I won't put this down because I always make a loud noise when I do that. So I remember it was middle school. I'll never forget. And I won't say the teacher that did this to me. I'll never forget though. But my phone rang during one of we had some where all the kids were in the auditorium and all that. My phone rang. And I forgot to turn it off or whatever. So I pulled out my phone to turn it off because it was dead silent in there. I'll never forget it. It was the weirdest feeling. And then sure enough, the teacher took my phone and gave me a detention. I was like, that's the first time I've ever got in trouble. Whatever. But what makes me wonder is, in class, by the way, to start, I really like this idea. I think communication between students is extremely important. And I think it's crazy. I check my phone, whatever, how long you've been on your phone. I checked it a week ago, and for a day, I had 45 minutes. I'm like, whoa, I need to calm down. And have someone put 8 hours in on a phone is just wild to me, and that's lacking human connection, which is something that I've always been a fan for, be involved in the community, be involved with each other. But, in the case of, let's say they have their phone in their bag or whatever, and it's in the honor bag, and it goes off, does the teachers have keys to unlock it so they don't ring in the middle of class, or do they just walk out the door and
I have assigned administrators to each hallway for next year. I mean, every one of us. So my protocol would be if it's in, let's say, Kathy's room, she just calls, someone should be within reach in a minute to 2 minutes.
Okay.
Let us deal with it.
Yeah.
Because I don't need any more friction that's happening right now between the students and the staff. This is a big one, let us handle it. Because we can call a kid out in the hallway, we don't have to embarrass them, just say, can you hand that to me and get it back at the end of the day? And I go back in there and get to work.
Yeah, because I know that's going to be something, there's kids that are going to forget to turn off their phones. And somebody's going to call them, and now that's disrupting the class, I'm sure, and that's going to always cause some headaches, so I'm just before I get it.
It'll take a while, like I said. There'll be a bump, and then it'll calm down.
Yeah, and that's what I'm guessing is going to be the situation, and that's what I was going to ask you. From Trotwood and Dayton Public, was it pretty much everyone was mad at first, and then just kind of, at the end of the year, people kind of forgot about that being an issue? Because it seems like that happens a lot. Where,
My guess will be the first 3 or 4 weeks, and then it'll be routine. They'll start figuring out the ways around it, which will be humorous for me. Because kids are kids. I mean, they're going to try every which way to get to it. Let's see what inventive way they come up with.
Yeah.
And how long does it take me to catch on who really struggles to even do a power?
They will have Google searched it already.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure they're already plotting something. So, okay. Well, that was just my question. I appreciate it.
My question is, have you thought about giving them access back to the phones at lunchtime?
Well, my only problem with that is when I went through the referrals, and I've been reading them for 4 days, 90% of our problems are happening during that time. Most of the instigation, what's happening, is coming from the phone. So we're going to leave them in the bag till the end of the day for a while.
Right, so my question would be, I know that you said during dismissal, they get the phone back and has been locked. And that would require that they touch it against something that is magnetic. Have you guys considered, I'm sure it's gonna be kind of a trial and error experience, but the carving out of time that's gonna take, because that's a lot of students to consider, and putting the busing and getting everyone out the door in a timely fashion, and this is my concern.
Sure, sure. So when working with Yondr, the big difference between entry and dismissal and the time labor is like increasing the number of exits at dismissal, at least certainly at the middle school, I would assume probably high school too. And that they made it very clear, it's very quick, like it's a walk by, tap, and keep moving. So initially in terms of like that first week of rollout, there's certainly gonna be some buffer time where we extend it, kind of like in our wonderful middle school locker bays and the challenges that those present. We, at the beginning of the year, I think we had 5 minutes for them to like get used to the locker, open it, and now it's down to 2 or 3. And we would shave it off a little bit because we look at the hallways and be like, oh, we're clear, like we're in good shape. So I think certainly like in those initial weeks, there will be explicit plans to make sure like, hey, if we dismiss at 2:10, let's get ready at 2:07 to make sure that we're in these different spots. And I also admit the multiple dismissal points, like at the middle school, we'll have multiple points, both at the walker side, car rider side, as well as the bus side.
And I think Eric, maybe touch on the point about the visit that we've already had and the support that we have, and they've already looked at our arrival and dismissal process and
Right.
they make recommendations.
Yep, so a Yondr consultant had come out and seen all of our entries and dismissals and did not really express any concerns with like logistics in terms of thinking through what other schools are doing. He offered like input on, at the high school, making sure that we use lock boxes instead of just like going around and trying to screw on the magnets, for example, to increase the efficiency of it. That was definitely a clear point, as well as just making it very known, like we're going to be there initially to help with the manpower too, which I think was very helpful to hear. Because certainly there were lots of questions that I would ask, like, so where's a good point for it to be like screwed onto the wall? And or like, what do other schools do when it's a high traffic space? Because that middle school building is a challenge, right? And certain stairwells are not ideal. So it's like, let's make sure we have it in this place or this spot, as well as assigning duties of our staff to be in those spaces. Like that's something that our staff buy-in and buy-in with the phone challenge is going to only help us. Because sometimes there's, oh, I got caught up with this. And the phone motivation with staff is another variable too. They'll be there.
And I'll be honest with you, I do bus duty. I'm a crazy one that likes to be out there. At the end of the day, they're trying to get out as fast as they can to get that bag over. Dismissal will be cut down to the most efficient time. Like I'm sitting there thinking through, like, how do we put them on the bus? So they hit the Yondr bag on the bus. You can't open it till you're on the bus. Now get the bus out of here before you come back with a profit. So I don't think that would be that big of an issue for the high school.
Okay, I'm sure all the students are being very excited to leave to get access
Yes.
back to
Right,
their
yeah.
phones. That's a
That's
good
what I
point.
said, put that on the bus.
And if they forget to hit the magnet on the way out? I'm just saying, before you walk out, that guy takes you over and closes your bag back and you come on the bus.
What happens then? Well, we have, I don't know that we even circle back. The magnets, if we have to, we can get additional magnets that we keep on the bus, if that's what we have to do. We're not gonna do it perfectly the first week, 100%, it's not gonna be perfect. So if we have to come up with new, Jack and I talked about dismissal, and do we have to add 5 minutes at the end of dismissal time? If we had to shave 1 minute off of every class period, but we capture the amount of instructional time and meaningful engagement for kids during the day, we can figure those things out.
Absolutely.
And Cleveland's already implemented this last year. That's a huge district. If they can do it.
The entire district did last year as well.
So my question is for students who don't arrive like on time, like because they don't have a first period, and then students who leave like early, will there be accommodations, or are the locks on like a timer, that kind of thing?
We'll make, that'd be an easy one. Like you guys can come, like you said, if you don't have the first period, when you roll in, sign in, we can have something right there. And do the same thing on the way out, like put one in the office for the sign.
Okay, so like they would go in the office, get it and check, okay, thank you.
There would
I
definitely be
think
some.
you're thinking the technology is a bit greater than what it really is. Make this a magnet.
Okay.
It's like the clamp on clothing that stops theft.
Yeah.
When you see them, that's essentially what it is. It's like,
Speaking of that. Bring up Yondr bags for me.
One of the things that I find challenging, and most everybody knows, I'm a coach, and I'm a tennis coach, and tennis can be canceled like that.
Yeah.
And our announcements, Candace, don't listen, our announcements are just awful. Let's just say that. The kids don't hear them, they don't pay attention, there's rooms that cannot be heard, there's so much going on, and God forbid, I have a match that gets canceled in the 11th hour, so to speak, and I have kids going to the bus that aren't supposed to for an away match, and the way I've always done is I've connected with my team captain to let him know, he lets everybody else know. Now I'm left, because we're gonna have to improve that communication a lot, because it is a problem. And I run into this frequently.
We'll work through it. I mean, I've had buildings like that, like the old Belmont building. You couldn't, it didn't even work. So when we had stuff like that, we almost went door to door.
Okay.
And just pulled the kids, say, hey, it's canceled today, make sure you get on the bus. I mean, that's not uncommon for my world at all to go and do that. So we'll find ways to solve that issue.
Because I know that has been a huge problem.
And something we've done at the middle school is like with our PA system, if it's in spaces where it can't be heard, we've increased the number of radios too for staff to make sure that those announcements get repeated on the PA and then also like via radio. So that's certainly like that in addition to like teaming, we've had, each team has created a text chain so that messages can also go out that way. Because from a communication standpoint, there's no reason for it not to be effectively communicated with us doing this. So.
Okay.
The only thing that I can say, and this is because I've had my sons in the district, sorry this happened. The communication at the high school, when you call and leave a message, sometimes you don't ever get calls back.
I'm going to address that.
So that's one of the things that I was wondering about.
You can't do this and not fix the other.
Right.
So that's the sit down conversation that'll happen.
I have one more question, I'm sorry. Now, with these bags, all right, they look kind of small, and you mentioned you're gonna fit AirPods in there and like a watch. I mean, and I know there's things that are much bigger than AirPods. Like, how are you gonna fit these things inside that tiny little bag? Is it that loose of a bag where you can just shove a bunch of stuff? Really? Well, that kind of answers my other question. Can't you just hit the button on the phone through the bag to turn it off if it's ringing?
It's awfully thick.
Oh, it's thick but stretchy. Okay. I'm like, shoot, that might just solve my other question if you could just turn it off through the bag. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, you guys. Fantastic presentation.